Hi everyone, my name's Kevin, or Kev. I don't know how many of you know me, so many new faces, which is really, really good to see. I don't know if it's because we're doing the museum tour afterwards or because you're with the user group, but we'll find out. I had a couple of questions about the gift shop that you saw when you came in. That'll be open at 4 o'clock when the presentation's finished and we go down. So if you wanted to buy a gift to remember your user group here, then feel free. And that's just by the entrance where we'll go in for the tour, so you can't really miss it. So
I've already got a lovely mug.
Oh, I wonder where that came from.
We've got 3.
I'm conscious that my presentation is the slot before the tea break, so I feel I'm going to be under pressure. So I'll try to keep it short and sweet. My plan is for it to be quite high level. I didn't really know how to pitch it or where to pitch it. So it was just something I've been working on. I thought, hey, I found it interesting. I learned something and maybe I just want to hear about it. So if we want a more detailed, more deep dive, then happy to chat to you. But if we want a part 2, maybe we'll see. So hopefully everyone's heard of LabVIEW. That's why you're all here, I hope. Beckhoff, is that name like most people heard of? Like, just show of hands, how many people are using Beckhoff kit? Okay, like pretty much the whole room. Okay, and with the EtherCAT? Okay. Few. So my goal was to basically do this, make LabVIEW talk with some Beckhoff kit that I had, and it had to go via EtherCAT. The kind of main driver is we had a system set up that was doing the LabVIEW EtherCAT bit, and the Beckhoff bit was kind of there with some other kit as well that we were talking to, and that kind of was working fine. And then as the system's grown, we've got more kit attached to it. We started to see some faults and wanted to understand what's going on, and that's kind of where this whole thing kind of spun out from, I guess. So just like a brief introduction to what EtherCAT is. It's basically a protocol that you can communicate to various automation devices made by Beckhoff EtherCAT, and it's now kind of being the ownership of the EtherCAT standard of the EtherCAT technology group, or the ETG. And the reason I bring that up is during my journey with this and trying to understand EtherCAT and getting it to play nice with NI kit, I actually had to reach out to the ETG to understand how some of the ways that NI have done some things. I don't want to slag NI at all, but the way they've done some things doesn't agree with those guys, is the short version. And then who's Beckhoff? So I kind of like, well, most of you know Beckhoff. So they're a company that make toys, or not toys, but kit we can play with. Fun, I call it toys. Fun stuff we can play with and automate. They have PLCs for controlling a number of different things. They have various I/O. They have a whole range of things. They also have some software that they use, which I'll talk about a little bit later on. So my kind of system that I was working with and what I was trying to get going was we had, so we had our PXI over there. This bit didn't exist. And we had some kit here, which is analog output, analog input. It doesn't really matter what the models or parts are, but and then we had a 9144 chassis as well, and they were all connected. And we wanted to add in this block in the middle, which is the Beckhoff PLC. It's a CX device, Charlie X-ray, and it can do EtherCAT communications. It can run code on it deterministically as well, which was pretty exciting. And it has, more importantly, a whole bunch of diagnostics and debug tools and information that I can get with what's going on my EtherCAT network. So I haven't put it in the slides, but how I kind of got to this when we were seeing some issues, we were using another piece of Beckhoff kit, which I kept calling the EtherCAT sniffer. It basically sits on the EtherCAT network, and using Wireshark can do like packet capture, so you can see what's going on the EtherCAT network and trying to spot anything that was going on or anything that was suspect, and that kind of pointed us in the direction of this after much conversation with Beckhoff. So the CX device, in a nutshell, the way I look at it is kind of like the C-Rio a little bit. It doesn't have an FPGA on the backplane, but it runs real-time and deterministically. you have, they call it slices, modules, C-series modules. I don't know, my head just equates things like that. That's just how it works. But it's pretty good. It has like a built-in DIN rail mount to the back plane, so it's really easy to just mount on it. The operating system that comes on the older models, so we got a bit of loan kit, and that was an older model, and that had Windows CE on it. The newer ones have BDS, Linux BDS. Is that right? BDS. BSD. Thank you.
Or LTS.
LTS, is it? Okay.
So you still get Windows on some of the
I didn't know that. I thought it was transitioning. What was your name, sorry? Dave. Ooh. That's like a really nice segue from this presentation to that, I think. So maybe, I know I said maybe I'll do a part 2, but could be a part 2 over there. So I started with the LabVIEW component and was like, how do we get EtherCAT into LabVIEW? And to be honest, that was pretty straightforward. So you have your LabVIEW environment, you have a 9145 or 9144, again, NI kit, talking to NI kit. Life is good. It was super easy. It was right click in the project and add. And then it basically told me I had this module connected with this input, output. And then you can just drag that into your VI and away you go. For third-party hardware, it's a little bit more steps to get that going. And as I said, I'm not trying to slag NI, but they did some stuff that is not how the other devices do. So we'll see as we go. So one of the key things in any software development that you're doing is being able to successfully debug and diagnose problems, because it's inevitable. You're going to have problems. Nothing you write is going to work first time. If it does, then you should go out and buy a lottery ticket. That's your lucky day. So looking at what was available to me from the NI offering, and I'm hoping someone's going to pipe up and be like, hey, Kev, did you not know about this extra bit that gives you all of this? Okay.
Keep going.
It was wishful thinking. We have the online master state and online slave state. And what this can do is the one at the back shows us all the connected slaves and tells you the state. And this state comes from the EtherCAT state machine. I'm not going to go too much into it. There's loads of information about EtherCAT and the state machine it has. But basically, pre-operational is the step before operational, and operational means good. An error is either yes or no. And when stuff was going wrong, I could just say, yeah, it's gone wrong. I don't know anything more, that's what it tells me. You can then look at the slave a little bit more, you can look a little bit more into it, and you can see the different states here. And then you've got this explain error. And typically the error that I was getting that was coming through was like a LabVIEW type error. And it was just to the kind of effect that there's a fault. I was like, okay, so I thought, okay, let me call up the ETG and see, hey, if they can help me with this, and told them the fault. And they were asking me for an AL code. I was like, an AL code? Who's AL? I don't know. And this wasn't telling me that. But when I did dive down into the actual EtherCAT driver for what generates this screen and gives you this error in the state, there is actually an extra method in there that does give you the EtherCAT code. Why is it not there? Because with the AL code, if you type AL status into Google with EtherCAT, there's like a whole list and it tells you exactly what the problem is. Yeah, I didn't know that at the very beginning, but I eventually found it and then kind of made this tool into our own application, but added the AL status. So that's really what we wanted to know. So I wanted to see if we could get any more information, any more reliability from the system, because we were having dropouts still, and just being armed with just this information didn't completely solve our problem. So this is where, as I said, Beckhoff have some software, which is called TwinCAT. So who's used TwinCAT? Hopefully all the Beckhoff folk. Oh, okay, not as many as use Beckhoff. Okay, interesting. So this is TwinCAT 3 that I used. I don't know what TwinCAT 2 is or what TwinCAT 1 is, so I'm guessing it's before that, right? But the kind of thing that gave me the warm fuzzy feeling with this was that it was heavily based on Visual Studio. So if you use Visual Studio, this looks familiar. They're basically taking everything out of Visual Studio that you don't need for doing Beckhoff PLC programming and just left what you need, which was super helpful. So this was a bit daunting. I thought this was going to be a LabVIEW project, and suddenly I'm in another environment. But it was a good challenge, a good opportunity to learn. So with TwinCat 3, we have two key paradigms. I stole this slide from YouTube. I can't pronounce his name, so I'm not going to try. But if you type EtherCAT Beckhoff into YouTube, there's one guy that comes up who's made like a YouTube tutorial for everything Beckhoff, and that's where all my knowledge came from for this. And this, I just thought, just said it really well, so let's take it. So the XAE part of it, what they call it, the extension shell, is like where you actually write the code. This is the TwinCat 3 environment, and I've got a screenshot of it in just a minute. And this is as developers where we spend our time. We can then deploy the code that we write in the TwinCat 3 environment down to the actual device. So this, in my case, was one of the CX devices. And then this is able to run in kind of a real-time kernel. I don't know too much about the kernel or anything like that. I didn't look at it, other than I can see you can change the timing, and I messed around with it a little bit. But I'm by no means an expert in that part. And that was cool. But then the other power that came from the TwinCat that I thought was really good was you can actually deploy your code to the PC you've developed on and still run it with the real-time within the real-time kernel. And I thought this was amazing because I was like, well, how can you do this on Windows? But within the TwinCat environment, it allows you to actually hijack one of the cores from your PC to be dedicated to the XAR, I think it is, to the kernel. So when you reboot your PC and come back up, if you had 12 cores originally, Windows system will say you have 11 cores now, because one core is completely dedicated. Windows can't even see it, which was awesome, because then you can test stuff without actually having hardware. And yeah, I thought that was a cool feature. And the other cool feature of TwinCat is it has a 7-day rolling license. So if you're kind of doing a proof of concept, because we didn't know if this kit was going to work, we had a loan from Beckhoff, we didn't want to commit until we knew it was going to work for our need. But the 7-day rolling license, where you just type a capture in and you can continue to use the TwinCat software, that was amazing as well. So I was really happy. And then, yeah, off the hardware, we have the sensors and actuators. So as promised, I said I'll bring up a screenshot of TwinCat 3, and this is the environment. There's a lot that you can do, and I'm suppressing some of the stuff from the UI here that you can't, that I've hidden in the project tree on the left there. They have additional stuff in there like safety. So if you're using safety module or safety slices, should I say, motion, if you're doing anything with motion, there's a few others, I can't remember all of them. But I disabled all of the ones I didn't need because I was trying to keep this simple because I was learning and it was a bit daunting for me to be outside of LabVIEW a little bit. So the ones I've highlighted there, system, this is where you can do that fancy stuff with hijacking a core and changing the timing and stuff like that. PLC is the next section down. This is where you actually write the code for PLC. It has its own syntax, TwinCat, which I thought was a bit annoying. And there's some things in the syntax that did frustrate me. But once you know the syntax, it's pretty readable, and it was okay. There's the Beckhoff website has loads of good resource on it and examples, and that's where I started. I kind of took an example and ripped it and ran with it. And then at the bottom you have I/O, and this is where you can add your I/O. And the I/O feature within TwinCat 3, again, is pretty good. I'll probably sound like a salesman for TwinCat at this point, so it's pretty good. But you can just right-click and hit scan, and it will just scan for everything that's connected and ask you, is this what you're looking for? And you can name it, and it makes it really easy. And for a novice coming into this, yeah, I thought that was a really nice feature. But one of the key things that I wanted to get was some more diagnostic information to be able to solve the problems and understand what's going on. So over here, we can see, I'll just on this tab for my EtherCAT device, I can see I've got my 3 devices there, my 3 saved devices. I can see the state, but I can also see the CRC error. When this is running, if an error did occur, I'd see it down here with the AL status and some more useful information to actually tell me what device has gone wrong, what happened, and a bit more debug. So this gave us, allowed us to have confidence in kind of long-term running been able to see, are we still getting errors? Have we cleared the fault? Because we didn't know at this point if the fault was software, was it hardware, was it cabling? But at least we have a bit more information. You're also able to see the live values coming off the slave devices as well, which was really useful. So this is a screenshot of the timings tab. I probably got the name wrong, but it's where you configure the cores, and you can choose. So this was taken from my PC, and you can see I've isolated a single core here, and I'm taking 100% of that core and dedicating it to TwinCAD, because all I was running was just this simple task. So, but you're not limited. You could choose as many cores as you want to. I don't know. You probably have to have at least one to run Windows, or whatever the minimum for Windows is on there. But I didn't try too hard to break it. But I don't know. And then, yeah, with the timing for your tasks and stuff like this, you can configure timing in whatever you need it to be for your application. So back to my overall kind of system view, and I just want to kind of dive down a little bit into the kind of makeup of this, and where I've got kind of master slave there, and topology. So my PXI, I wanted it to be an EtherCAT master, and so that I could use what LabVIEW has out of the box. So being able to have in the project my devices and kind of drag drop stuff into my my VI and my application. So that meant having my CX device as a slave, and then I thought I'll have the 9144 as a slave to that because it's talking to a PXI. I thought, hey, NI to NI, that should be good, right? And that was fine. That wasn't a problem. And then the new kind of bit was wanting the slave device, which is the CX, to also act as a master to these devices down here. And then this is getting all my sensor information, and then ultimately ferry all that information back up to the PXI. So the code that was on the CX was just acting as kind of like a middleman. It was just reading the sensor stuff and then putting it onto the slave interface so that LabVIEW could then grab that information. So again, back to that kind of handshaking. So the way that I achieved that, in the TwinCAT 3 environment, I configured the slave device to have the same channels that the devices had, so the analog output and the analog input, so they match. And then within the TwinCAT environment, they have a tool for mapping, so you can basically map channels and say this channel maps to this. So it was like a one-to-one map. And that was really the extent of my code. The other code was just a heartbeat, so I could see that the CX device was running, and that was it. And then once I've configured the slave device, you can then export the slave, and what you get is what you want to end up with is a .xml file, which is a slave definition file, which is what any master then takes to say, okay, what does your slave look like? These are all the channels, these are all the timing, and everything like that. Again, at this point, stuff wasn't working. Tried to get in touch with NI on this. They were not very helpful, so I got in touch with ETG, and this is where stuff started to unravel a little bit with where I was going. So they were surprised that I was using an XML, and in the past when I've done EtherCAT stuff, I've always used an XML. I was kind of confused when they were surprised, and I didn't know what this SCI file was, and apparently that's the way it's defined in Beckhoff. I don't know too much. He gave me a whole answer that was really complex, but there's two flavors basically, XML or SCI, and LabVIEW needs the XML flavor, but when I tried to export it as an XML, it didn't work. The device wasn't there, and I wasn't able to see the device, which is really frustrating. And then I went on Google, started searching, and came across this sneaky little forum post that basically said, you need to tick the SCI file, so it thinks it's an SCI file, but then change the name to XML. Yeah. So I was kind of like, okay, let's try that. And I asked Beckhoff about that. They didn't know. I don't know. Does anyone come across that? Okay. Yeah, I'd be keen to understand that, I think. If someone finds that. So once I knew that little foible and we were over, I had my XML file, opened up my project again, right clicked, and then I had the option to add my CX device, and I could see, boom, all my channels, and I was away, happy days. I was pretty happy at that point. That was a huge breakthrough. That's in LabVIEW side then. The import slave is what you do. You just give it the XML file, and then it will upload the file to a directory on the Windows PC, and then also to my real-time PXI that I had running as a directory on there. So it knows what the channels are, and again, all the time. So at that point, I was pretty happy. My LabVIEW could see the stuff coming in from the Beckhoff, and I was able to ferry the information all the way across. So I kind of a few different screenshots going on here. So on the far left, that's what my LabVIEW project looked like, where I had my EtherCAT master, which was on the NI side, and then my slave device, which was the CX, and then in TwinCat3, here's my slave device. And this dummy here is another thing that frustrated me. So in TwinCat3, you can create devices by scanning, and that's fine. Or you can create a device by doing right-click, create device, and choose the type of device you want to create. So they have EtherCAT slave and they have EtherCAT master. If you create a slave device, there is no ability to export the slave definition. You know why? It's a slave device. But if I create a master and then add all the channels in, I have the option to export as a slave file. So what I had to do was effectively create the device twice, once as a master, once as a slave, just so I could get the XML file, and then you see a little warning circle on it, because I've then disabled it. I don't need it because the slave is there. Yeah, that's a bit frustrating, because if I want to make a change or add a channel or something like that, it's going to double it up my work. Now, what went through my head at that point, again, was for scalability. That's going to be really painful. All of this TwinCat3 environment there's an XML under the hood that defines that project tree there. So I felt like there's something I could do there to modify the XML instead of modifying this to do the check. But I haven't done that part yet. I don't know if I will, because the number of channels and change is very minimal. Speaking with my boss, it was maybe a channel might change, every 3 years, something like that. So is it worth investing the time to do some automation? Oh, probably not at that point. Just do it manually, document it well. And then, yeah, straightforward. LabVIEW got really simple example, and I was happy. So yeah, it's kind of feel a little bit of pain, a little bit of gotchas and things that you kind of have to know, but it's not said anywhere that you have to know this. Yeah, so we kind of muddled through. However, though, speaking with Beckhoff, they were, again, really good and really wanted to help with solve our problem. And they said to me that, hey, I know you're trying to do EtherCAT because that's your existing system, but we do offer loads of other ways that you can communicate with our kit. So if you are really struggling with EtherCAT for whatever reason, have you tried out one of these? And I looked at, when they said that, I did have a look and see what we could do. But the key was we had an existing system in our live system, and we wanted to have as minimal impact to the system as possible. So my stuff just needed to kind of slot in and not be too dissimilar to how it is now, which is why we kind of stuck with the EtherCAT route. We briefly looked at the LabVIEW interface. I'm not really going to talk about the others because I didn't look in any real detail into any of them, but the LabVIEW interface from Beckhoff is okay. Let's say okay. I don't want to say great. It's okay. I mean, there is an interface. That surely is a win. The reason I couldn't use it is it uses a DLL under the hood. Our PXI is quite old. Let's say that. We're running FileApp. So this was just a non-starter straight away. But another opportunity came up where we needed a simple data logger running on Windows just to acquire from one of the EtherCAT slaves that we had. And I thought, I wonder if this interface could work for that, because this is on Windows. So I thought, I'll have a look at this, have a little play. And this is where I got to the, it's okay, because it exists. There's an ExpressVI, and we get like a wizard, and we can kind of click through, and this will connect to TwinCat3. So we can see all the channels in TwinCat3. We can choose those channels, and we can read or write to them. So I thought, fab, this project they've given me, I'm going to smash this out in like a day because this thing exists and there's an API. What I wasn't aware at the time is this is channel limited by their own DLL to 10 channels. I had 16 I needed to read. I mean, I guess, yeah, I mean, Beckhoff stuff is good. It's there, and like all of this is there. It's just don't put a blocker for me.
What's the DLL protecting you from? What's it doing underneath the DLL?
So ADS is their own communication protocol.
By UDP.
Something like that. I don't see TCP, but that's basically it. Yeah.
I've always found scratch the surface. So I asked that question, what's below? What's that DLL? It's usually doing something really trivial. But because it's a DLL, you think, what's this magical thing that's doing complex stuff?
Yeah,
it usually isn't.
So Antoine in the chat has obviously been playing a lot with this stuff as well. He's
Sweet.
been, you'll have to read it all out, so they might be able to help. He said there's another library, Ackerman or Ackerman Automation, that he said it works like it in this. Maybe interesting.
Ooh.
We've just released a new version of this as well.
Of this one. Ooh.
I just use you.
Of the
interface. Just use It's a primitive. No dependencies.
Yeah.
It works. If we use it all the time, I would just use it. Yeah. It never goes wrong.
Never goes wrong.
There was like a secret area where you could right click and change parameters on the number of channels. It wasn't secret, it just wasn't documented. If you right click, you could change the number of channels it came back with.
Did it
so
mess anything?
100 or 200 channels when I was playing with it. Don't know. Have another look.
When we open up your black box later,
It's that one.
his black box, can we have a look at that secret area? Oh, okay.
But yeah, there's this sort of little area that I was having all sorts of problems. And I eventually got hold of Harvinder, who's the guy who wrote it all, and it was like, oh, you opened the magic box.
I'm glad I'm not alone with this.
You might find that you'll be able to get all the channels.
Ooh. Okay. We kind of, that would be really nice, because at the minute I kind of went back to the stakeholders and said that we can have 10 without investing loads more time into this. But if it's an easy way to get all 16, that's going to be mint, and that ticks that requirement.
Could be wrong, but there could be something there for you.
Have a look.
Yeah.
Well, I did say I didn't want to take too long, and this was just going to be quite high level and kind of more just about my experience and my journey. Hopefully that was somewhat interesting to some of you. But yeah, any questions?
Just quickly, what kind of programming language do you use in the TwinCAD interface?
So TwinCAD interface has its own language.
Is it like a
It's text.
It's text.
It's text structure.
Yeah.
Also, it's got a load of logic.
No, the main thing, I was
C++
going
you can
there
use in it.
because I come from a background that has a lot of PLCs, DCS, and stuff,
Yeah.
and that interface is the same as ABB, the same as Siemens, the same as everything. So I've gone through ladder, through that block diagrams.
Yeah.
Not so much text, but it looked right at home. Yeah, that's the same interface that each and every one of the PLC systems I've ever used looked like. So I was looking at very familiar interfaces there.
That's really good to hear. It's kind of transferable.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because that's the only one I've personally used, but saying this across.
I don't know what the ISO standard is, but there is an ISO.
Yeah, yeah,
it's based on
yeah.
that.
PLC type
Languages,
interface.
yeah.
It does take C++ as well. One of the things I disabled was the C++ tab.
That's always good.
But yeah, thank you. I guess we're on to the tea break
Tea break, yep.
now. Oh, thanks everyone.
Cheers.
So I hear you're having issues with Thursday.
Great. Yeah, I'm Leah. I'm from Dyson. I'm going to be talking a bit about Quick Drop because I thought a few years ago that I knew everything there was to know about Quick Drop, and then I soon realised that there's all sorts of things you can get into, and especially some new features that have been included in later versions of LabVIEW. So I'm just going to give a quick overview of QuickDrop, talk about some of the new plugins such as Arrange VI Windows and Set Text Icon, and then some of the great community plugins out there as well. And yeah, the reason I'm sort of doing this is because I find there's so many times where I've got a VI in mind and I just can't think of how to get it fast, and you start thinking about how to get it rather than the code you're trying to write. So it's really great to have some sort of system, whether it's QuickDrop or palettes, just to not disturb your flow when you're writing code. So just for a very brief overview of QuickDrop, hands up if you don't use QuickDrop. Everyone? Okay, one person. Yeah, so I won't spend too long on this at all. But I do know some people, like if you started using palettes, some people stick with palettes, but so it's not just one feature really. It's a group of related features. Like there's the searching by the full name of the VI, so the windows and the space. There's the super quick drop, which are these like abbreviated things. And it took me ages to realise that the reason they're a bit weird sometimes is because they're designed to type with your left hand. So like all your path ones are actually AF. So you've got your hand on the mouse and a hand on the keyboard. And then there's also the plugins that you can launch, you know, control and space, control and something else from the quick drop window. So yeah, it's an alternative to the palettes, but I'm not like anti-palette either. I use a bit of both depending on what you do. And yeah, the reason I think it's great is because it does allow you to program as fast as you can think sometimes. So as you guys said, you will use QuickDrop, you probably know it shows the VIs that are in memory, so if you've got a project, anything loaded in there will come up as well. And it took me ages to realise that I used to like type what I wanted and then click on it in the menu, and then it sort of floats on your cursor and then I drop it where I wanted. But if the item you wanted is highlighted, you can just click straight away. I don't know if that's new to anyone else, but it was definitely new to me. So that's useful to know. It's useful to know that there are sometimes several keywords for each function, but it's not always great. The amount of times that I search for minus when I need subtract is just crazy. And I was listening to a podcast and I heard that they came up with a new search algorithm for the order that the results show in, just to optimize it for QuickDrop. So I thought that was quite interesting. When I was trying to learn QuickDrop, I think it's Darren Messenger's, there's this game called Falling Shortcuts. That's, if you haven't seen it, it's really fun. Basically just VIs drop from the top of the screen to the bottom, and you have to type in the abbreviation before they get to the bottom of the screen. There's like an easy, difficult mode. So yeah, if you're ever trying to quiz yourself on them, that's the thing to use. I'll probably upload a PDF of my presentation at the end, so you can just download the VIs for that if you ever want to practice. I started getting into QuickDrop a lot more when I was doing my CLA a few years ago, just to try and speed things up, because I was finding I was always running out of time. And I couldn't believe that there was nowhere relating what you see on the palettes to what the abbreviations are. So it'd be really great if I should really type these up properly, because I just scrolled all over a screenshot. But it's really worth knowing the really common ones, like the ones on the structures palette, for example, that you're going to use thousands of times a day. So yeah, maybe if I get time, I'll make this into something proper and upload it somewhere. Right, so on to QuickDrop plugins. So plugin shortcuts are the ones control and space, control and something else. Does everyone, hands up if you don't use those? You're not use those? Aha, yeah, might be a choice, who knows. Anyone have any favourite ones?
Control space, control R, so remove something.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah, saves you so much time. Yeah, so here's a list of all of the ones that exist. I think this was for 2020, but I don't think they've added any more. So you see that some of them have these shift modifiers. In some ways, some of them I wish you didn't need to press the shift, because if you want to insert something and you've selected several wires, you'd think it would just do it, but who knows. Yeah, it took me a while to get the the server rename ones, things like that working, because you have to really know what you're looking for in those ones. But yeah, they're pretty useful. And yeah, if there's any you want to see at the end, I might be able to demo them. Sometimes it's a bit nerve-wracking doing it live, but yeah, wiring multiple objects, that's just great when you've got like LabVIEWs that you just want all the references going through. And yeah, most of them are undoable as well, so that's pretty handy if it goes wrong. Right, so on to some specific shortcuts that oh yeah, did I put that on this list? So there's Arrange VI Windows, which is one that ships with LabVIEW from, I think it's 2019, it's in the next slide. But personally, I get really frustrated when I open up something from a project and it's just off the window. And especially if you're trying to screen share and things are popping up in random places, it just get really annoying. So I've been working on a certain driver where I had hundreds of very similar VIs in a project. And if they're all higgledy-piggledy, it just doesn't look great and it gets quite annoying. So I was looking for a way to sort of standardize how everything looked. So I'm quite interested actually, because I've seen so many different ways that people like to arrange their screen when they're working on LabVIEW. Some people might put their block diagram and front panel side by side. Some people might go above and below, but especially with this big wide DAC VI. And then NI's sort of default is overlapping. I was just wondering, out of these, there might be other things people do, but who does side by side? Yeah, I'm doing side by side. Overlap, anyone do that? Yeah, top bottom, anyone do that? Yeah, so we've got a big mixture here, which is quite interesting. Anyone do anything different?
I think it depends.
Yeah, depends what it looks like. Yeah.
The whole answer to that.
Yeah.
It depends. I don't know.
It is all a bit fussy, isn't it? But,
Playing hide and seek with them.
Yeah,
yeah.
two screens.
Yeah, sometimes it is just everywhere. So I started, when I had this project, I thought, oh, I'll just do some scripting. Oh, that will be really easy, won't it? So I made this just quick test VI to try and understand what all the window bounds and the panel bounds and the origin, just how it behaves. So I was dragging it around. And then I realized just how complicated it is with like this bar up here, depending on whether you've hidden, I can't quite remember the specifics, but like everything can be different widths and you have to sort of subtract that when you're trying to position stuff and it just becomes an absolute nightmare. But I happened to be reading through the LabVIEW 2019 upgrade notes and I saw that it had this new shortcut that promises to arrange the objects and placement of the front panel on the block diagram. So I thought, yeah, that sounds like what I'm trying to do. So what it's saying that this Arrange VI Windows does is it does lots of things. On the front panel, it arranges the controls and indicators to be consistent with the connected pane arrangement. So just like, error-wise at the bottom, you can write it that way. And it will resize and move the front panel to a consistent top left location. So bring that up to the top. And then on the block diagram, it will scroll to the origin, scroll the block diagram to a reasonable location compared to the top left block diagram object. So like if it's really long, it will assume you read from left to right, so it's scrolled to the left, and then it will resize and move the block diagram to the top left of your primary monitor as well. So they're both on top of each other. So that's and it's your primary monitor as well. So it's worth noting, like if you've got a laptop and then one or two screens, probably by default your laptop's your primary monitor. So it's worth setting whichever one you actually want to do LabVIEW on as your primary monitor. So yeah, break it down. The shortcuts that already existed were Control Space, Control O to reset origin. So that's just bringing that up to there. Like when I first started in LabVIEW, I didn't really, that didn't bother me, but now if I see that, I'm just, it just hurts. So I'm always doing that reset origin. And then the cleanup front panel block diagram. I can't remember what year the front panel was. Like, I think 2019 has it, but 16 doesn't. I can't remember exactly what year between that it shipped with LabVIEW, but that's really useful, especially well for sub VIs, not for proper UIs. But it's the window arrangement and window framing that's the really useful bit of arrange a window. So some of the benefits are you can set a minimum team monitor size. So I know, like, when I was working in a global team, people in SEA had smaller monitors than us. So it's quite nice to be able to say, when you use this shortcut, make it so it fits the person in the team's smallest monitor. That's just quite nice. Yeah, it just makes your project look neat. You can actually configure how this shortcut behaves in your LabVIEW ini file, which is handy. I'll go into that in a minute. There's the stuff about making it always showing your primary monitor, and then you can apply it just to your block diagram or just to your front panel, depending on what you need. So when it comes to the ini file, there's some settings that, because I like mine side by side rather than overlapping, there's some settings that I changed. So I'll just demo that in a sec. But basically what I'm trying to do is force it. So for most block diagrams, they're going to be, for me, 400 wide, and then I'm just saying start my front. No, yeah, my front panel is going to be 400 wide, and my block diagram, I just want it to touch the edge of that. And then I don't like that little gap that NI leave by default down the left, so I just want it touching the left of my screen. I guess there might be a use for that if you like putting the project behind, but I don't. And then I just like a bit of a wider canvas margin around it. I don't like it when it's really tight around it, but that's just a personal thing. So I'll demo the default behavior, and then let's see, do I have a project? Yeah, I guess I might as well do it on the falling shortcuts view. So if I just drag this somewhere random, I'll open up my LabVIEW ini file. I know that my stuff is at the end, so I'm just going to get rid of that to show you the default behavior. So I'm going to do Control Space, Control F, and it's moved it to that position there. I've actually set my shortcut, so if I do Shift F, it will do both of them. I think that would have been a nice one to include, because otherwise it takes twice as long. Yeah, that's the default behavior. But because for this driver I was working on especially, like the block diagrams and front panels were quite small, so it made sense to be able to see both of them. So I'll paste those ini keys in. You can find them on the forum posts related to that shortcut. And then if I save that, Control Space, Control F, you can see that now, well, now they're sort of side by side, and you can see both of them. So to the presentation. So yeah, it's just handy having that flexibility. I'm really thankful to the person who wrote this for putting that in. And it's just worth noting as well, there are things you can do for UIs in the VI properties, or you can do it all with like scripting and property layers as well. So yeah, you're able to make it scroll to origin at runtime, for example, which is quite useful. So now on to the next plugin, which is apply VI names to icons. This one's really handy. It's Control Space, Control K. It's from LabVIEW 2020 onwards, but all of these you can install on earlier versions. You just need to go to the forums and find it. So what's really nice is if you're a person who names your VIs with spaces, it will, you can take the file name and it will sort of split the name in spaces. I'll show it in a minute, into separate lines on the text of the icon. And you can also type in your own text into the quick drop window and apply that as well if you wanted something different for whatever reason, like say if it's too long. But it doesn't work so well if you use things like underscores. It just doesn't know where to split it. It'll just try and put it all on one line. So yeah, this is handy if you would have put text anyway, but obviously if you're going to make a nice API of glyphs, do that instead. Just saves a bit of time. Oh, and it's worth saying as well, So this was something that someone on the forums just built and they put it into LabVIEW. I just think that's so cool that, you know, you can make something and it can end up in LabVIEW. So let's give this one a go. I just opened up a very random library that I found. It's a load of tests for the, I think it's a unit test example from the examples. You can see at the moment it's got a glyph. If I run Control Space Control K, it's applied the library icon to it, and it's just put the word waveform, but it's sort of got cut off because it's too long. So what I can do is Control Space wave space form Control K, and then, or like I could put the dash in. So yeah, it just saves a bit of time because I find this menu can be so slow to load. Well, it wasn't bad that time, but yeah, it's worth. At one point, I wrote a shortcut to load up that menu because I really hate double clicking. Like it just, my fingers after a day of writing LabVIEW, double clicking loads. It's just not good at all. But yeah, the shortcut's just as slow as that. Oh yeah, and obviously I could have typed any words. So it's like hello world, Control K, and yeah, and it will do like 3 lines. And if there's no library header thing, it will take the full width as well. I mean the full height. So yeah, that's quite useful. Yeah.
And on the text that gets added, is that added into the?
Oh, it's in the text layer.
Field,
Yeah, I'll show you it. Yeah, good question. So it just goes in here, and every space is a new line basically. So yeah, it's just a bit of a time saver. No. And now onto the last bit, community quick-drop plugins. There's some really great ones out there that people have written. One of my favourites is OpenVI Reload Explorer, because the amount of times I was doing, Control-Shift-E to get to the VI in the project and then right-click Explore, just sometimes that's not so practical. So there's one you can just do in a single, it'll just open it up in Explorer. There's one for auto-sizing clusters. There's one for aligning that brings up the menu, or you can type in what you want to do. So just get all sorts of things that make it a bit faster. And then have people come across Natify.vi? I can see a few nods. That one's really cool. It's like next level scripting. It does stuff like it will, if your error wire is overlapped by other wires, it will move the error wire to the back in the order, because apparently that's the thing that annoys people. I haven't quite got to that level yet, but people have written extensions for it where it applies it to the whole project. Oh, and it does all sorts of great things like if people have used like a jumble of fonts and stuff, it will sort all of that out, the background colors. So yeah, it's really nice, that one.
Show us icon as well.
Yeah, what's it do?
If you have lock on and
Oh yeah, the term, yeah, it's handy.
Really handy when you get a piece of code written by someone that doesn't like LabVIEW.
Yeah, yeah, it's quite handy. Yeah, so there's a whole list. I think I put them in the last slide. But yeah, it's worth downloading if you. You just basically drop the VIs into. There's 2 folders on disk that they can live in, and yeah, from there you just assign them a key, and yeah, it's pretty great. I always found that it took ages for new shortcuts to come, like, get into my head. So I just choose 1 or 2 and put them on a sticky note on my monitor for a few weeks, and then every time I was thinking, oh, I could use this, that just really helps me. And then I remember I was at a user group, I think it might have been, was it an Emerald? I can't remember, but Stefan Lemons gave me his book of shortcuts, which is a bit like the ones I used to produce. It's just got everything in. I might as well pull it up. But it's just a really useful PDF if you're trying to learn these things. It's on the NI forums, but So it's got all the keyboard shortcuts. It's got, where is it? It had all the abbreviations. Yeah, this page is quite useful. So yeah, it's worth just seeing them all in one place. Or you can get to that menu from, you can sort of see it in here as well, and you can add your own in the quick drop configuration. It took me ages to find that. For some reason, I'd never really looked around in that menu, but it's really useful where you assign the keys. And then, there's so many possibilities out there for what you can do. Stuart, who I used to work with, wrote this one that puts error case structure around everything, but not the controls and indicators. It was a bit controversial. Some people hated it, but if you've got an idea, just go ahead and do it. There's a template out there, basically. It might not be as hard as you think. Because I wrote one that pulls up tortoise git log, because I just found it a bit annoying having to go to File Explorer and then right click and pull up the log that way. So yeah, there's lots of possibilities. And yeah, that's it really. But if anyone's got any awesome quick drop things they want to share with everyone, or if you've got any questions, now's your chance. Thanks a lot. Yes, Ed?
For clarification, like,
Yeah.
when you did the LabVIEW stuff, you didn't have to restart LabVIEW, which I found kind of odd.
Yeah, I expected to have to restart LabVIEW, but I just tried. If you save it, it just seems to work. I guess it's because when you go into the VI that actually does this, I think it's just because of the way that works. Just lets it load up. Is that stopping it load? Yeah, it is. Somewhere in there, it's got the thing that reads the INI keys, and it just seems to cope with it. If you've just saved it, it doesn't care if you restarted LabVIEW. But I think other things within LabVIEW, you have to restart LabVIEW, because I guess they're loaded in on startup. I don't know.
Just have a plug from Tim, who's on the chat. He's got one for doing the number formatting. If you can hear me, Tim, I can't quite tell if it puts the number in as well, or you just pick an existing number and then put in the format specifier, and it will do it without having to go through all the menus.
Oh, nice. Cool. Oh.
On the numbers front, the one that it's not really a keyboard shortcut, but if you've got like a numeric and say you want to put 1000 in, you can just put 1K and then it'll put 1000, or 1 capital M for 1 May and then 1 other M and so on. So I think it's pretty good because I've made a mistake of missing it out. So you actually just put what it is, then yeah, that's what it's like.
Oh, nice.
Also, just want to mention that very similar to the quick drop plugins, which are brilliant, there's an NI community for shortcut plugins, meaning right-click menu plugins. So when you right-click on different things in your block diagram or front panel, you get different context menus to act on those objects. You can write plugins, and people have been writing plugins, and there's a whole list on the NI community. I think there's around 100 plugins there, and I think I use daily. I use 5 or 6 of them daily. So yeah, it's really useful.
Are they more stable now? Because I was just worried.
The ones I use anyway are stable. I don't think I tried all of them over 100. I think I tried 20 or 25, and out of those I stuck with 5 or 6 that I find really useful, and those work without any problems. I created 2 myself that are up there as well. So yeah,
your comment one.
Yeah.
Description.
So,
cool.
They're really useful. And Darren Mackinger and Stephen Loftus-Mercer, they each have a post there with their favorites as well. So that's a good place to start with their favorites.
Great.
I work with a lot of them. I've only found one that is very stable. Sadly, it's the one I like the best. Bubble Magic. you've ever encountered that one. It helps you work with clusters like this. Is you can, if you have a cluster going into a loop or a structure of any kind, you can right click on any cluster one and say bundle or unbundle, and it will help you insert those functionality. You can select what objects or data points you want to access. It's just, yeah, so if you have a case structure with your cluster going in, say, oh, well, the new case, I need to access or insert these data values. Right click on the wire and say bundle, and gives you a menu saying, oh, this is the cluster, this is what it contains, which one of these objects are you accessing?
Nice.
So very useful. Sadly, it leads to a few crashes. I can't figure out why.
I fully agree with that, yes, and also that tool is useful for selecting methods and properties in property nodes as well. So it gives you a search functionality similar to kind of quick drop. So if you have a property node or invoke node and you need to add another property or method or change something, you can do it quickly by searching that diagram. It's very, very great. And I think the developer who made it, I think he lives in the US, I can't remember his name anymore at the moment, but yeah, he did a fantastic job. But it does crash sometimes, and you can tell even by the size of the library that you download that it's a lot of work put in. I think it's a few megabytes or something like that, whereas most other plugins are like very, very tiny. But yeah, he must have put a lot of work in.
Nice. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Right, there's people here who don't know me, which is, I wasn't even going to do an introduction. Hello, I'm Steve. My company is SSDC, and I do things for GDevCon and the like. I've been doing it for a long time. 80,000 hours I've been doing this kind of software engineering stuff. 80,000 hours, that's amazing. Anyway, I did a blog. I did a blog on the trying to sort of see the gaps in the community, because I was spending an inordinate amount of my time communicating with them because there are gaps in what they've done with their new organisation. So this was a much better second diagram from the first one I did, and I was trying to segment it out into groups of people and whether they've got whether their needs are being addressed, essentially. And I always try to have a simple sort of goal for any of this. So that the goal of all of this, and having an ecosystem, the point of the exercise is that we have a growing community where there's more people coming in than leaving, which is a hard goal at the moment, but we'll carry on, we'll fight. So going around and just going a bit deeper into the A's, B's and C's and D's in this graph. So the very beginners, and this is something I don't get involved with that much, so I'm going to skirt over this, is the newbies, the hobbyists, the kids. So they were covered by STEM, they were covered by FIRST Robotics. There is a lot of historical context here. It's a bit dead, to be honest with you, and it's not something I can help that much with. But if people want to step up, this whole side of the LabVIEW world has died on its ass, I think. And there are facilities, not NI facilities, but there's still, we can direct LabVIEW at things like Raspberry Pis and Arduinos, and we can do useful stuff. And there's still a lot of robotic stuff that you can bring kids in to sort of visual programming. But like I said, this bit I think is stunted and will need work. I'm not the right person because kids, it's the younger people. I could do it with kids. I've done my bit of that. Next one, and this is for me the place I think that needs work, is for new people coming into the you know, their boss, be like me on my first job, the boss tells you have to use LabVIEW, you know, and you're still going to get judged if the project's a success or not, but you've been told to use this tool. You don't know what it's for, you don't know, you know, software engineer, you know, you've just been given this tool. And there used to be training days, dev days was the thing, and I used to come out with a couple of guys and be partners there, and we'd show people who were very nervous that you could do complex things with LabVIEW. Currently that's gone. We will revisit these. So these are the areas. So bear in mind that one. I'll talk about that one. There's YouTube, some YouTube facilities that you can sort of look up. Again, being the first engineer, this is my first job. Where do I go look for information? I don't think there's a great deal. I still think that market is a bit underserved, shall we say. Then we've got the experienced community, user groups. I think we're reasonably well served. I mean, there's complaints. It's not as well served. I don't think the NI forums are currently manned enough by NI. I think user groups, again, there's an initiative come back from NI. They begin to want to have user groups again. But that's, you know, we used to have, in the south, we used to have like 3 user groups running. We've lost Southwest one. So it's not growing, but it's still there. There's still people, we're still doing presentations. And then there's the conference world of events. So my bag is GDevCon. There is GDevCon people here. Speak to us, come see us in Glasgow, it'll be marvellous. Come present, you'll get to present on an IMAX cinema, for Christ's sake. I'll give you a bigger screen to put your presentations on. NI Connect is just in Austin this year. There is going to be a programmers track, I heard. There's going to be a couple of rooms, I think. It's kind of my take on it is now aimed more at business types. It's quite actually good for if you're a partner and you get to partner stuff. It's actually quite handy. But it's limited to 800 people. Those are selected people, and a lot of them are managers. So I don't know if that's the best place to present. That's almost the best place to present. And the freebie online is GLA Summit. So we're quite well served. I will, of course, vouch for the self-organised thing. I'm an old punk rocker, so I think we should be organising ourselves. I don't think we should rely on NI to provide us with everything. I think things are better if we do it ourselves, personally. Let's go to the third one. Right. The reason I've got D in this circle is because I think the important closing of the circle is we need to talk to the people who make LabVIEW. We need to talk to the managers who make, are responsible for LabVIEW. And that used to happen to a degree, not a very big degree, but it used to happen to a degree at events. It doesn't happen to now. I don't know when I last spoke to a product manager or a dev or anyone really. So I put this as a locked door at the moment. But the point of it really is that the feedback they get should then lead into the product. And of course, they want to do it all automatically now through forums and stuff like that. But that's a very blunt instrument. It's no discussion there. It's this is my idea, reject it. That's my ideas. Most of my ideas are stupid, so. But I'm never funny. But it's not a discussion. People don't. Ideas come from people knowing each other. I'm very old-fashioned, and if you know somebody, you heard Darren Ash's name here. What's his name? We used to know them. We used to know these people, that conversation, therefore, is much more engaged and much more fruitful. So that's kind of the state of play, I think. I mean, feel free, this is just my feel free to stop me and say my diagram, John. Somebody already has. That's why I changed. So, okay, we have resources. We're not resource free, and we're not helpless to keep that situation the same as it is. So I've been working very hard to change that situation. I don't really know what I've been doing my day. And I need to start planning this one. We now have one of these. So I was saying things have changed. They've recognised that they need somebody to repair the tattered developer relationship. And Nancy is that person. If you've ever met Nancy, go take her for a drink. She's very fun. And it's, you know, she's got that job title. The thing with job titles is she has a responsibility. She has key performance indicators attached to that job title. So it means that somebody somewhere within the depths of NI is taking them seriously. So that's a good email, because if you feel that something isn't happening with regards to her, give Nancy out. Oh, she's told now, but I reckon you should give her an email. She'll back me for that. But there are also other resources outside of it. So the GDevCons, for example, we exist to put on the conference, but we also exist as a non-profit to put on educational things in the graphical programming sphere. So if you have something that you think should be happening, talk to us. We may have money, we may help it. We've got an organisation, we may help you fund it. G-Central has money. It's another organisation that has money. I don't know how much money. But the other key place that we found that can be talked to is NI's gone to a distribution model. Talk to distributors. They are interested. Some more than others, but they are interested in engaging with us as LabVIEW programs. So there's various ways that you can, in my spoiled way, I can get my own way. So you can use these people to get your own way. And that goes down, user groups, partners, us companies. We have a huge value. And this is, again, when I've been in sessions with NI, kicking them very hard, we try to remind them about the value of us as developers to them. We are the people who sort of put all their hardware together, you know, and we're important. And people need to remember that, you know, because there is a certain power to that. So, my Machiavellian mind. I'll open up all the things we've been doing, all the plots we've been planning. So I think we need to address A and B. I think B, to me, is the most urgent, I think. Kids are great. You can teach them a program, then they'll discover the opposite sex and alcohol. So, or same sex. But, you know, it's this group here. If you get an early project and you get no help, and it falls on its ass and it just goes terribly wrong, you ain't going to touch LabVIEW again. You're going to think it's LabVIEW's fault. And actually, it's not really LabVIEW's fault. It's the support of LabVIEW's fault. It's being helped is not happening. So I'm working fairly hard with distributors at the moment, trying to get some form of dev days going. So dev days will be a kind of daily event where they chip up in a town, there's businesses around, and you have introduction type courses and experts on hand and that kind of thing. Access to equipment, but it's entry level stuff. I think these are important because these are the things that draw people into the community. These are quite good for drawing people into. Hello, all new people. I think D is the other worry for me. I'm talking to Nancy quite. I keep going at it, kind of. But anyway, I keep battering her with the same message, shall we say, is that we need access to their devs and we need access to product management. They need to let them out of Austin and other places, and they need to come and meet us. They need to have budget for that. That budget is not here for this year, but if people also keep joining me in this message, the budget may be here for next year to do that, because they're very keen to repair this broken relationship they have with us. So we can take advantage of that to mould it into what we want. Do this stuff. I was going to have a rant about change, so shit changes all the time. We are agents of change. You know, this is what our job is. We're agents of change. So there's been a lot of crying about the change here tonight. Well, cope with it, because it's changed. It's what we're doing to other people is what's happening to our community. We have to cope with it. So, and what you can do with that attitude, rather than, something's changing, is actually you can say, well, it's changing. What can we do to get better, to get more, to get what we want? And that's really my this stuff is still sadly missing. But I wonder, again, if we can do it together as a community. I think it will be kind of interesting if we aim our focus on that more. And certainly in GDevCon, we're talking about how we can do that. We're not really pursuing it as a focus yet. But I think perhaps we should. I think we should be thinking about how we can get education back into using LabVIEW again, because there's a reason people use MATLAB and Simulink and stuff like that. It's because they're giving it free and it's the first thing they solve a problem. That's essentially it. It's not rocket science. It's sales stuff. But the big issue really is then rollout. We never had the first robotics over here in the States. It's a big thing, We've never in the UK done it. So that's what I'm saying. I don't think I'm particularly the best person to talk about.
So what's for robotics? Is it like the Lego League that your AET got, or is it different?
It's a big old thing. They have stadiums and kids teams, and they'll come from all over America and do it, all over the world, I think.
Whereas
Yeah.
Lego League is on milestones.
But yeah, it's a similar idea, I think. It is a competition.
Yeah.
But I understood the Mindstorm were discontinued and they're no longer there.
I don't know, because clever kids.
There was something in the UK, which still goes on as the Big Bang there, which is like the kids and all that kind of stuff. And then I did used to take my storms there, watch the competition between schools. Obviously, I don't do that anymore.
Newbury had a whole team. We had 4 people that you could call up and you could say, I want you to go to school and show you stuff to kids. They were itching for schools to engage with them. Here, our schools don't engage with engineers full stop. In my experience, I found them very loath to. But I think, my idea would be colleges and universities rather than schools anyway, because even that's missing. I just think there's, that one's one I'm going to pursue once I've solved the other ones. Yeah. I can see the other ones as being solvable. That one's somebody younger and me can tackle that. I'm running out of years to do this
On a
stuff.
very personal level, I was exposed to LabVIEW and MATLAB back at uni in South America, and both of them, I think it was easier to run LabVIEW than MATLAB because of the licensing issues. Whereas now I feel like MATLAB has an easier licensing than LabVIEW does, and I'm not really sure how the uni is going, but I did a lot of LabVIEW stuff back in uni. And
yeah, no, I know.
It's a 5% cost license, isn't it? for all education. So yeah, it's a bit cheaper than.
Well, but there is a LabVIEW community that should fill that gap, and so there's that bit's actually kind of taken care of, but you need the interest material, something to get it going. I hadn't really thought of it like that, but I mean, I've been learning Rust, and the amount of people I've spoken to in the Rust community saying it was really cool, so I started playing with it, and hopefully I'll get a job in it one day. I don't think I've ever had a conversation like that in LabVIEW.
Yeah, but I showed somebody 2 or 3 weeks ago. I'd never done programming at all. I showed it. I was working on the system that she was looking after. Flipped up LabVIEW. What's that? And I'm, you know, it's still programming pictures. It's mad, isn't it? And it's still, I still firmly believe it does stuff that. Actually, it was an article that just popped up today. It was about. It was about graphical driven design, essentially. I think it was some driven design, but it was. Wouldn't it be great if we could put these pictures and use something called data flow to put them together? LabVIEW, and there's this whole paper going on citing UR and all these sort of 1970s things. And all the time, I was like, you just don't know we exist, you know, this whole thing, and it's still productive, you know, after 35 years, you know, it's worth the hassle. It's just bandwidth, really, you know. It's so the idea for so I can't see what it is. So the plots and plans. Is that not working? Hold on. Brutalist.
Plugging that into. Is anybody turning up to GDevCon from then on?
Yes, there will be.
Probably yes.
They're gonna sponsor us. Because they got sponsored. They got money to sponsor these events. No devs.
No devs.
Well, unless they come and actually present themselves. We don't encourage NI to present, should we say? In our constitution, it's not friendly to marketing type presentations, so it's quite hard. So what we sort of say is, you come and present something, a passion project, we straight in, you know, because we had Ben Leader do this into customers.
Yeah, Rebar. It's like Rust-inspired LabVIEW.
Yeah. So that was, you know, so there's no prohibition that you have to go to signals with everyone.
Given what you were saying about Nancy being desperate to repair all this.
I don't think Nancy's desperate. I think NI.
NI period.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah, it just seems like a bit of a lost opportunity for a big cluster of NI architects.
It's yeah, but it's like any $2 billion company. It's a super tanker. You're not going to get into a handbrake tank. It'll, you know, you have to say, well, the budget for next year involves shifting these people to the UK, and that has to be signed off by lots of men in suits who don't understand why it's important.
No travel this quarter. How many people?
Yeah, no, it's, I mean, they're losing 4%. It's probably not the best time for these kind of things. But that's okay. So anyway, plots. So the plot for this one is that at the end of the GDevCon, wherever the GDevCon may be, is that we would open up a day for NI to have we were calling it a CLA summit, but it's not really a CLA summit, it would be a meet the devs type thing. I said, if it is what we want, then we'll help. Type coercion, shall we say, is what we've tried to do. If it fulfills this, which is my idea, then we're help. But the idea really is to get that loop closed. So that's that manipulation. You know, I'm not impact. I haven't got the power and the funds to do much more than plot and try and manipulate and all the other things. But that's the idea behind that, and they seem quite keen they really kind of would have liked to have done this. Certainly, I think they should have done it. So does anyone not know what the GDevCons and things like that I'm talking? Is that everything? Everyone knows what I'm talking about. It's not what. So the GDevCons are independent conferences. It's a paid event, 2 days. NA is 2 days, 2.5 days. And we've got a new one in Australia, if you fancy going there. She's just starting off. And we're non-profits. Essentially, all the money we get go into starting the next one.
It is 20th and 21st.
That's useful information. If I was useful, I could say that. Yes, in Glasgow. Mm-hmm.
No, they finished.
Yeah, you just missed the early bird. The only cheap way in there is to do a presentation.
Probably worth saying we did it a bit differently this year with tickets. If you have feedback, positive or negative, it would be interesting.
Yeah.
Just try and come down to see what works.
It's a little bit difficult with the timing of the early bird ticket and the new fiscal year.
Okay, yeah.
When funding is released for training.
Yeah. Unfortunately, companies' fiscal years are not always the same. Damn them. But I mean, in Europe, we're really aiming to give a good platform to presenters. So we want new presenters all the time. I don't want to see the same old faces, really. So, yeah, if you want, that's a really good. It's a really big screen. really big screen. If you want to see your presentation towering over you, which who wouldn't? I mean, then yeah, we've given a very good platform to this. It's the third biggest IMAX in the UK, I think.
So,
I think Manchester and Leicester Square. They're the bigger ones.
How many people you got going coming to see?
We've budgeted for 150. We tend to buy a place that can cope with twice that because software engineers don't. Generally. So it's a really nice venue. So we've got 3 floors and cafe areas and science area and science museum. Yeah, it's cool. Lots of hotels around it. It's a good place. Had a good trip round there. Easy to fly to. Southampton. No, I'm going to have to drive because I've got shitloads of old merch to get rid of. It's not such a good place for me to drive to. So anyway, ideas, thoughts. Like I say, if anyone wants to pick up the STEM side of it, that's a yeah. There will be people to help you. I think I'd like a working group where people are actually thinking about it, because that's like I say, it's a gaping hole really. But I also think sort of getting back into academia and stuff like that would be useful. Like you say, I don't think there's much reason that you can't go in there and say, we don't need a license anymore.
Yeah. I think you need a killer. If you're on the hobbyist side rather than the education side, I think you need a killer area as well. You almost want to take over like home automation or something like that everyone can get to, and everything you Google, half of it's going to be about LabVIEW. Like, if you really wanted to build some momentum,
it's playing role for paper matter. Money to keep that up to date. That's what they need to do. He's the guy who wrote it.
It's open source, so anyone can dig into it.
Yeah, but he's the best guy to look after it because he knows how to do it. But yeah, there's that you know, if that could be supported and you knew that it would carry on being supported over the 64-bit, then I mean, being able to stick LabVIEW on a compute module for it, we've just found out to be wonderful for our business. It's a wonderful thing. It's
when you combine.
Yeah. This is very true. But it'd be nice to have other platforms as well when we can't bloody buy them.
I remember using LabVIEW mostly with microcontrollers from Freescale. Instead of going with a full platform, I just had one MCU that I used for everything. Well, it then had to interact between the LabVIEW UI that I built, and then everything was coded with Code Warrior. So I haven't played actually with any Raspberry Pis or Arduino, so I'm not really sure how much that has evolved from what I started with.
It's pretty much the same as using R2. I'd say it's basically the same. So if you know that
To the Raspberry Pi side.
Yeah, to an RT that FPGA, do it links to compute module. It's not much more difficult.
But I don't know how much will be impacted by the fact that they're not building new compact readers and how dependent it is on that tool chain. Sorry, thinking about as you say that. I was thinking,
this is again.
If they don't have an ARM compiler anymore,
These are areas where our voice can help guide NI in the right direction. Again, I don't think we speak as one, so they get the same noisy crowd chipping in their ears, a million times. But it's not the they need bullying really. That's the thing you need to sort of say, because it's really good. Having a license that you can do this kind of stuff. And if you lose your job and you still want to keep your skills up, you don't need a license. You can just carry on doing it. You can do home projects. It's there. But, the tools are kind of there. It's just, and giving a kid a 2020 version, they're not going to care it's not 2023.
Oh, yeah,
it doesn't have to be the latest version or anything. It doesn't have to be supported to the same level. It just needs to be. You just need to know that it's not going to disappear into a hole somewhere. That's anyway.
So do you talk to the other GDevCon organisers around the world?
Yeah.
So there's a common message that can be going fed back to NI. Sort of thing.
Well, we're LabVIEW champions, so we feed back to NI, which gets reasonably high in the chain. So they get feedback. Yeah. I mean, they're not short of feedback. I'd say it's. I don't know whether all feedback is equal. See, my view is to manipulate people to the way you want to manipulate them. You have to give them. You have to say, this is a really good thing to do, isn't it? Look how good you're going to look if you do this thing, and that's how you push people to do the right thing. But, currently, our feedback is, God, that was shit. I don't know. You're not going to win many battles with that.
Yeah.
That kind of view. It's a much. I'm kind of more positive and also a terrible human being, so that combination allows me to manipulate people. But it's for everyone's good. If we can close, if we can get to that, and I'm not even saying that in the halcyon days of 4 years ago we had that.
Yeah.
I'm not looking back to some golden age. I'm just sort of saying that this is how a healthy system should work. I think. Because I would personally say that the feedback they would always get is not the right feedback. You're sharing an article about Visual Basic, and they completely modified Visual Basic 6 because they were listening to their most enthusiastic users, and it transpires that 3% of very enthusiastic users is not the 97% who actually coughed up for it. But the feedback is currently. I don't even think it comes from the forums now. I don't know where the feedback comes from. It's certainly not person to person. It's what I like.
Seems like the idea exchange is just dead, isn't it? It just makes me really sad. Like, when's the last time they implemented the idea from the idea exchange?
I don't know. I mean, they should make a big song and dance about it when they do the release. It should be I don't know because I don't get very excited about LabVIEW releases, so I never have. So I don't actually go looking through and see what the latest ones are. But But I'm sure a couple of sort of on it's like 2021 they said, oh, these are ideas. From the
Yeah,
idea
they call them out
exchange."
pretty
They
well.
did
Yeah,
make a song of that.
2023 was pretty thin on the ground. So
I completely agree with Leah that, in my opinion, the LabVIEW dev team should do a lot more to listen to the ideas. There's ideas there with hundreds of kudos that were posted like in 2014 or something. Everyone wants them. They're low-hanging fruit. They're easy to implement, and they still haven't done it. I just don't know why they don't assign 1 or 2 devs for like a month to implement like 5 popular ideas. Just, it would make a lot of sense to me.
I had a great idea for global variables. Is that every time somebody puts something into a global variable, it expands. You can take up more and more room. Be okay, you can take out as much as you like, but eventually take up more and more of your block diagram, just to discourage you. But that got quite a lot of kudos, but I never implemented it. I can't think why.
I read once from somewhere there was something that you weren't supposed to use in language, they made it go bing every time you used it.
Dunk. But I think a lot of this could be solved by just by being visible, and that's it's the walls that are the problem. And that's Nancy hasn't been on the job for that long. So her remit to make NI less opaque, should we say, as a company. They're very opaque as a company sometimes. But so yeah, and responding on the forums. I mean, going back to there, the NI presence on the forums is next to nothing, and that's been felt. People see that. There's no blues come. Are they blues anymore? There's no blues come in and help you if you've got a problem. And that's to solve yourself. Because
they had to respond within 24 hours.
It would go binged, wouldn't it? Yeah, I don't think that's the case. And that will hopefully be rectified, those kind of things, but it's still an issue.
No.